not treat a pro disc golf lifestyle like having fun with your friends on tour.
Yeah, I think that's a
Because I think that is still at this point for a lot of the pros what it's like.
What's up, degenerates? I'm Jefferson, half of the disc golf world, and today I'm going to break down Simon Lizotte and Drew Gibson exposing the pro disc golfer lifestyle. First, gotta say thanks to everyone over on Patreon for the continued support. If you want bonus unfiltered content, check it out over there. Also, this is for real the last chance to pre-order a hat. The link is in the description or hit us up on Instagram. Are you guys in the same boat that the Simon Drew podcast should exist? And no, I'm not only saying that because it'll provide us with way more content. Well, I am, but I think these two can give a great perspective on the side of the sport that goes untold. The two of them have spent over a decade on tour, and this medium is the perfect way to express these stories. Started off with a bang too, in my opinion. Although I wasn't too interested in the Climo conversation, so if you want to hear that, go check out the full video on Drew's channel, along with the clips you're watching in the background of the two throwing. Instead, I wanted to shed more light on the other topic that was discussed.
at least bottom 50% of the current tour. It's a check to check, week to week kind of thing in a sense. So when you cut their pay by 50%, like, what do you think happens? And then what do you think, like, how do you think that affects the tour in terms of, like, how many people are on the tour and all that?
We've been talking about sponsors slashing salaries or cutting players altogether for the past couple videos. Many people don't believe us, and trust me, when the news officially drops, you'll know exactly what we're talking about. But here, Drew goes on to explain the same thing we've been harping on. Except I want to make one thing clear. Yes, some players with contracts expiring are going to see a crazy drop in their new price. However, there's some pros with years left on their contract that they thought were guaranteed money are now being cut upwards of 75%. I'm not sure the players Drew is referencing, but I know from the information I was told, multiple top 10 players' contracts would be cut and another that will be announcing really soon. Or the sad reality, even if a manufacturer is going to cut someone's pay, if they can't find somewhere better, they're essentially forced to stay with the company that screwed them over. It's important to remember that these players invest in themselves, such as getting RVs to live in. How are players supposed to make payments when the money they planned on getting is no longer coming in? And that's just one example. For a better perspective, here's what some players shared with us about financials while on tour. Spending upwards of $3,000 a month, which brings me to the biggest point I wanted to push back on from this video.
If I look back like 10 years, I had no salary for like the first 4 years, 5 years I was on tour. Like you don't really need it. Honestly, it can be the total grind. Like it's not just about playing the tournaments, it's about running clinics in the off days, it's about vending at every event, selling discs.
I'm sure Simon is speaking from his own experiences, so I'm not going to deny that back in the day, maybe you didn't need a salary. However, times have changed since then in society as a whole, meaning inflation and everything costing $1 million more. Other pros who I'm just going to keep anonymous because someone asked to be, and I don't want to make this a huge deal for anyone. Also, to me, it doesn't really matter who the player is because if we're expecting players to pay $3,500 a month to provide us entertainment, we should treat everyone equal, if they are Simon Lizotte or if they're 75th of the rankings. This is their choice, and I get that, but we as fans should want more from the sponsors because clearly they aren't listening to the pros. Just wanted to share this side of the story since it really doesn't get told, and frankly, I'm sure that's because they don't want to endure any sort of pushback from the people that sign their checks as times are looking rough. On the other side, I do understand where Simon is coming from in terms of the hustling side. There seemed to be a switch in pro disc golfers' mindset, and I'm not sure what happened. It felt like back in the day, everyone had their gimmick event that would be their side hustle. From the McBeast Challenge, the Oakley's Bingo game thing, Hot Cocoa Dubs, and plenty more experiences that the goal was to help finance the tour. Now that stuff has seemed to disappear. I rarely even see clinics pop up from event to event, and even Drew said in this video when people try this method, they can't get anyone to sign up.
I've heard that from people. Oh, hey, man, I'm gonna eat McDonald's. I'm on my last $5. I'm like, oh, go to the next city and promote clinics. And like, well, I've tried that, and like 5 people sign up.
Not sure if this is a reason, but I'm sure it doesn't help. Now you can go to YouTube and search any tutorial and find hundreds of videos of top pros breaking anything you want down. Clinics have their place, but in all respect, people go because of the name teaching, not for the skills that are being taught. Not saying it doesn't happen. However, not nearly what it was back then. But also, there's a whole different side of the sport that wasn't present back in the day. In today's age of professional disc golf, the players are expected to create content and be active on social media. Most aren't even receiving anything from this, yet are obligated to make posts. Or worse, they are told the classic, you can earn a bonus, only to never be given any sort of compensation from the work. And yes, constantly posting and being aware on social media is work, no matter how much of it seems stupid to say. When you have to spend any extra time in your life focusing on the perfect Instagram picture and commenting back to fans, it's a part of the job. Not sure when it became mandatory for players to become their own social media manager, editor, PR person, and every other little task that has nothing to do with frisbee throwing skills. Yet we're asking these young players to do all that for significantly less money. Sucks even more when players have had written in contracts that certain media companies were supposed to be doing practice rounds for pros that got completely axed with no replacement. Instead, they had to resort to paying for camera crews out of their own pockets just to make some damn practice round videos. Was that a personal choice? Yes. But again, how in the world are you going to stay relevant if you aren't putting out content? Plus, these videos were pretty awesome and well enjoyed by the community as a whole, such as the Matteo Sai practice rounds or the quickly fan favorite Ricky Wysocki's. Why would House of Discs think this isn't valuable to have? Oh, I forgot. Because they don't give a shit about their players. Now, think about all the pros that barely have enough gas money to get to the next stop, yet we're going to tell these people to focus more on Instagram instead of in front of a basket. Touring back in Simon and Drew's early days are not what it's like anymore, especially since we all know the cost of literally everything keeps going up and all the extra cash flow in the sport is going dry.
Since 22, we've just seen, I've heard of companies being down 50% in the last 2 years. It's pretty crazy to think that there's going to be some people taking a 75% pay cut, and that's not limited to the people that some people don't consider being like a touring pro. There's going to be really good players getting knocked down pretty far, I think. The Pro Tour does a pretty good job currently of offering players a pretty good amount of vending opportunities. You're allowed to go to the Fly Mart one day a week. I saw in like our tour card email, they're allowing people to, like after your round, you could have a box of discs there and you could sell 50 time lapses while you sign autographs.
I'm glad that the players are allowed to sell discs directly after their round to the fans waiting in line for autographs. Not sure why that needs to be allowed, as that should have always been a thing, and that being said, I never saw it once happen. Maybe because they go directly to the autograph tent once the round's over, which is right by hole 18. Not sure if they were expected to carry the box around with them the entire round or what. But I also don't think most of these pros feel like shilling plastic to their fans every possible second. This is the moment to have a genuine connection to the people supporting you, not to be desperate looking for cash. And I understand that they need money, but can we think about the optics of that for just 1 second? Drew says that players were allowed at fly marts for free. However, I heard contradicting statements at certain events throughout the season from pros not wanting to pay the fee just to lose out on money. Why the hell at a world championship are the athletes making the event even a thing, being told to pay hundreds of dollars to set up a damn folding table? It was so bad this year there needed to be an alternative mart just so the pros could get some sort of value back. Stuff like this is where I see opportunity for more money being made. But again, what other sport has their athletes grinding away trying to make a quick buck just so they could literally have food for the week? I understand the hustle mindset that has always been involved in disc golf, but at some point we gotta look back and ask ourselves, is this going to be sustainable for the long run? It's easy to say that the cost of living on the road is cheap because there isn't a lot of expenses, but I also don't see how that's quite true. For starters, most players are paying for their own entry fee, which I believe is $400 for each DGPT event, but let's also count the tour cards. So for a full schedule, that puts the players down around $8,000. Then, most are paying off the vehicle they live in, which isn't cheap, I'm sure. Or you're staying in a place and over 9 months adds up quickly. Oh yeah, and can't forget about the flight over to Europe that again is typically not paid for by the sponsors. These players have to pay out of pocket just to attend one of the biggest events all year. These are only the essentials as well, because it would be pretty cruel to expect players to not live life and exclusively play disc golf for 9 months straight. And man, I know I keep saying this, but does everything not seem super expensive nowadays? And I lived on tour briefly, so I know the costs of some things, and it gets out of hand so fast, especially when you start missing cash at events.
And I literally asked you, I said, how do you do this? Like, how is this a thing? This guy just won and got 800 and something bucks. And he's like, It's a grind, bro. Like,
But you
and
got to remember that 12 years ago, $800 was way more than $800 is now.
yeah, $800 now is like,
It's like 2 tanks of gas.
yeah, it's not. Yeah, I think that it's going to be an interesting thing the next couple of years. Obviously, I expect Gannon and you and Macbeth and Ricky and everybody to still be up there, but I'm curious, like the middle of the road people like me, what we're gonna do.
This is the number one reason I want this to be a regular thing, because I love this old perspective of tour and how we can compare to what we are doing now. Has there been things put into place to help the players, or are we flying by the seat of our pants? I can be an asshole online about what I interpret and experienced. Together, these two have over 20 years of their life touring in all types of different positions. It would be awesome to keep hearing this perspective. Drew's been doing it for a while, and I always appreciated that he doesn't care what anyone thinks and will continue to speak his truth. He's one of the only pros using his voice for positive change. Yeah, it might be for himself, but I truly think he's looking out for the future of the sport. And I love Simon, but I don't think the narrative should be that touring can be cheap, especially when you're probably the most influential player in the game. I wish Drew would have pushed back a little bit, and he could have even used the video on USDGC as an example. For the most part, the money side of the sport is hidden, probably because there isn't any.
But here's the good thing. It's still in your hand, because if you're really good at disc golf, you won't have any issues.
Yeah, there's like 5 of those people.
I know, but anyone can get better.
This statement just feels strange to me because Ken Climo's $200K a year is more than literally every person on Discmania is getting besides Gannon. And even that's way closer than I bet you all think. Being good at disc golf right now can only go so far unless you are in the very top percent, which is like 5 people. The state of disc golf is in a very weird spot, and I don't think we can expect things to get better if we sit in silence about the unfair conditions players are supposed to abide by with no ground to push back. Hopefully we can create a place where information can be shared and a better perspective can be portrayed, because currently I don't think the reality is being shown, which is at the detriment of the players, most of them being the up-and-comers who have been dreaming of this life. Unfortunately for many, I don't know if that'll be a thing for much longer. Much darker of an ending than anticipated. But when you hear all the nonsense from behind the scenes, it's not something I can be happy about, especially since most of these guys are my friends. At least tomorrow's video should bring more cheer, as Swiss brings Ezra Robinson's player profile for day 10 of Discmas. So make sure to subscribe to not miss out on that one.